We are live, I think. There we go. All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the next QuaranCon event, which in this case is a reading by the very talented PL Stuart. Oh my God. Yes, Stuart. Jeez. I just had a moment of like, I started to say your last name. And then halfway through was like, is that the right last name? It's been that kind of day. I'm so sorry.
No,
But
that's
first
fine.
of
My pleasure.
all, we are so delighted to have PL with us today. It is the launch day of the second book in the Drowned Kingdom series. Is that right?
Yes, the
Yes.
last of the Atalanteans.
Last of the
Correct. Thank
Atlanteans.
you.
Yay. It was so exciting. Congratulations. That's so
Thank you.
awesome. And
Thank you
congratulations
very
on
much.
the success so far of this series. I am going to introduce for anyone who doesn't know Peel. Peel Stuart lives in Chatham, Ontario with his wife, Debbie. The Last of the Atlanteans is the second novel in the Drowned Kingdom saga and the sequel to the FriesenPress #1 bestseller, A Drowned Kingdom, which has been waiting on my Kindle for a while now. And I'm so excited to read it. And I just haven't read anything for about 6 weeks now. I'm really excited to get back to reading and to dive into the Drowned Kingdom series. So thank you so much for joining us. Audience members, please, if you have questions at any point, you can put them into the chat and then we'll address those after the reading. But I'm going to just duck out of here and leave the rest to PL.
Thank you so much, Virginia. So honored to be here. Thank you to Virginia McLean and everyone at QuaranCon and PS Livingston as well. Thanks so much for having me. So I'm going to do a short reading from book 2 of the Drowned Kingdom saga, which is currently in pre-order and will be premiering wide on Amazon, Ingram, etc. This weekend. So I'm actually after this event, I'm actually leaving to go to my physical launch party. Yay! First physical launch party, since COVID. I wasn't able to have one for Drowned Kingdom. However, I get to have one for The Last of the Atalanteans. So uh, I'm going to read just a short excerpt from the first chapter of the book, and hopefully you enjoy it. Okay. It was just pretend, I told myself as we marched. A game, a play, theater. Glathan, Thurl, Welly, Senti, and I, 5 actors on a grand stage. I'd planned it all, including the use of my assumed name, Ost. Ost was a shortened form of the derogatory nickname given to my useless namesake great uncle. His real name had been Othrin, like me, but people had disparagingly called him the ostrich for his notorious habit of sticking his head in the sand, avoiding his princely responsibilities. I was doing the same now, but only to fool my enemies as to who I truly was. As Ost, I had composed and directed the performance we acted out. But if this audience did not like our performance, it would not be catcalls we received, but rather execution. Although things had gone better than expected thus far, I cursed our fortune, meaning Badan. Of all the lords to encounter entering Lynchon, via their easternmost fortress, we had run into none other than the Earl of Lionshead himself, a man deemed stout enough by the new regime to hold a vital border city in the middle of a rebellion against Welly's rightful rule. That meant Badan was not only trusted by Welly's usurping brother, Orlu, said to be Lynchon's greatest warlord and called the Undefeated, but also, presumably, Badan was rather formidable in his own right. By the single god, Badan was so ugly, I thought my death might come solely from being forced to look upon him, long before our ruse even had a chance of being uncovered. The luncheon earl's bulbous nose was like a swollen eagle's beak. His stringy gray locks clung to the sides of his balding head, but not the top, like some sort of macabre curtain. He looked far better with his helm on than off. But ugliness did not spell incompetence. Certainly, my guard commander, Lyar, who was far away with the rest of my knights, was uglier than a mole rat, but still highly capable. The muscular Badan, For all his ugliness, he appeared to be a cunning lord and a seasoned campaign veteran, just like my lair. Everything Badan had done so far supported my initial assessment of him. He intercepted us, confronted us, and interrogated us. Then, he'd quickly decided not to kill Welly, nor us, thankfully. Instead, Badan had decided to take control of Welly himself. Badan appeared decisive, capable, and unscrupulously willing to steal credit for Welly's capture from Earl Senti. He was a man to be reckoned with. He had us now marching along a thin dirt path, heading west from the banks of the Firth River, veering unexpectedly away from Lion's Head, where he was lord. I wanted to know what was happening. I strained to listen to Badan and Senti converse. I heard Senti ask Badan why he, as master of the city, had been at the border with his bodyguards when we 5 deceivers had arrived at its gates. Badan explained that he'd been traversing the city collecting rents. He halted us at that point, looking at the walls of his fief, wistful and yet grimly resolved. Then he looked back at Welly disdainfully. I gleaned then that we were not going into Lion's Head at all. What does he plan to do with us? I wondered. When Badan had stated that Orlu would want Welly in one piece, I had assumed he would take us into the city and eventually transport Welly to Orlu. But his expression then, as he looked at the city he ruled, was filled with longing and spoke volumes. It seemed he had settled upon a course other than going into Lion's Head. Did he mean to take us straight to the capital, without even stopping at Lion's Head for the day, if not the night, without provisioning properly? I had planned with the expectation of us spending at least a few days in Lion's Head. I soon got my answer. It seemed that 8 of the 19 men with Badan were of his own household. The rest were merely warriors assigned to the border watch. The ugly nobleman ordered those 11 watchmen back to their posts. When they departed, he turned to one of his personal soldiers, a young fighter, richly accoutred and as ugly as Badan. I soon learned, unsurprisingly, that this was his son, Badar. Take command of the city in my absence, Badan said curtly to his son, giving Badar his earl's ring as a token of authority. The fact where he lives must remain unknown. Tell no one, and speak to those border guards as well. Swear them to secrecy on pain of death. Make whatever excuse you need for my disappearance. I'll send a bird from Lionfort with further instructions. Rule wisely and watch for traitors, enemies of King Orlu. By the fire goddess, I feel they lurk close by. Badan had no idea how close by. And that concludes the reading.
Awesome. Thanks, PL. I'm waiting for questions to come in. If anyone's watching and you'd like to ask questions, now's a great time to pop them up there. And in the meantime, we can have PL talk a little more about the series and the book and some details.
Oh, well, thank you. Well, the Drowned Kingdom saga, of which A Drowned Kingdom was the first book, that book was published in February of 2021, explores the idea of what would happen if survivors from my version of the lost realm of Atlantis, what if they were survivors? And in this case, my series chronicles after the fall of Atlantis, which is I call Atalantics in my series. There are survivors, and those survivors are led by a prince named Othrin. He is a very flawed character, bigoted, misogynistic, racist. He has colonialist, has some very, unpleasant views. He does have some good qualities, what people would consider noble qualities. He is brave. He's somewhat intelligent. He's devoted to his family, his people, his wife. Unfortunately, one of the things that drives him is his very staunch monotheistic views. The Atalanteans worship a single deity. Othrin believes that deity, of course, is paramount in the world and that his civilization was paramount in the world, superior overall other civilizations. And his plan, even though now, of course, he's lessened and he only has a small remnant of his people as followers, is to reestablish himself in a new continent across the ocean from where Atalantic sunk, where he plans to establish a foothold and eventually take over the whole continent and bring all the other, what he considers pagan worshippers in that continent under his heel as a solitary leader, and of course impose his monotheistic religion on all of them. Obviously, the people there aren't really keen on that, so that should make for some interesting drama as the series goes on.
For sure. That's really interesting. I actually think you convey that really well, because as I was listening to you read, I was like, wow, this guy's really harping on everyone's appearance and making a lot of judgment calls about people based on their appearance. So, so I was like, is this a good guy? Is that who we're following right now? But yeah, it makes it sound like very clearly more complicated than that, which is always awesome to read. That's fascinating to me. So this is the second book in the saga. Can the books be read as standalones? If we have viewers who are wanting to jump into the series, should they definitely start with the book A Drowned Kingdom? Should they start with this one? I mean, obviously, probably they shouldn't start with this one, but could they? Could they start with this one if they were, ignoring reading order, or what would? How well does it stand on its own? Is it meant to?
I believe the book stands somewhat on its own. I think you would lose out a bit of the richness in terms of the overall tapestry if you read the second book. However, you can read the second book on its own, and I hope I provided enough backstory and detail about the main events that occurred in the first book, woven into the second book, that you would understand the gist of the main events from the previous book. So you could read it, buy it, and read it as a standalone. I hope to make all of my books and my future books like that. But I do believe that there is you do lack a bit of the context if you don't read the first book. Plus, I think the first book it's my favorite. This book, while a lot of people I think believe this book is an even better book, which I'm thankful for. Obviously, my goal as a writer is continuous improvement. I want to make each book better than the last. I have a soft spot, obviously, for, like most writers, for the first book.
Of course.
This book is wonderful. It's dedicated to my lovely wife, and that makes it particularly special. And it is a bit more action than the first book, but so far readers seem to think that this book is really special. So
excellent. Well, you always want people to think that the second book is even better than the first, even if we maybe always have a soft spot for that first book. And of course, we hope that everyone will go buy A Drowned Kingdom and read that first, because obviously, we want all that richness and depth. It's always interesting to me. There you go. Look at that gorgeous cover. So yeah, everybody should definitely start there, check that out. But it's always nice, I think. Well, it depends, right? Like, I love series where, you really have to read them in order. It makes no sense, because you get that extra fast pacing and intense, just one building off the other and not much review of what has already happened. But I also love, those sort of longer epic series where you really get, each book can sort of stand on its own, but also, the maximum depth of character and plot is from reading all of them. And I personally, I write both and read both. So
and you write them well. I'm a big fan of your work. Sarah's Claw was amazing. Planning to read the rest of the series for sure. So
thank you so much.
One of my top reads this year so far. My book is actually a 7-book series.
Nice.
People aren't aware, it's not a trilogy, it's 7 books. So Othman's journey is going to be potentially, if he survives, a long one, or the saga is going to be a 7-book series, whether Othman is the main person or not. But it is a more lengthy series, so hopefully that gives time for some real immersion into the characters and the story, which is it's a bit of a windy, twisty, circuitous plot that you don't really, I think, understand what's really going on until much later in the series. You
Right.
get snippets and bits and pieces, but you think it's the micro, but really it's the macro, and that only
Nice.
becomes apparent as
Yeah.
the things expand. So
Oh, that's awesome. I love that. I love those mysteries. Those are really fun to follow and untangle as a reader and as an author. But that sounds absolutely fantastic. I'm not seeing any new questions showing up. But and I know that you kind of have to like run right after this, so you're welcome to talk more about the series and the second book in particular. I'm happy to chat with you, but like if you need to get going, I know you're off to your live event, which is so exciting. Congrats on having an in-person event. They are so fun, and it's one of the sad things about the pandemic launches is not having those. Oh, we have an audience question actually. Would you project Othran to become a redeemed character despite his domination, hunger, and judgments, or an anti-hero? Or who knows besides you, of course? Question mark.
Yeah, evil laugh. That's a great question. Thank you for proposing it, whoever did.
That was JBJ Blaze and TFA. I'm not sure.
Oh, JBJ Blaze, yes, who has bought the book, and I'm honored. Thank you so much, JBJ. Has been quite a loyal supporter, so I appreciate that. He's a wonderful person. Met him in person, had the honor of giving him signed copies, of him buying signed copies of both books. So fantastic person. In any case, yeah, I believe that Othran's character arc will be an interesting one. That's as much as I can give away. But what I will say is that even if someone changes, I think that to make that change realistic, it's not something that's going to be instantaneous. It's going to be something that takes place over the course of a lifetime, essentially. If like real sustained change, I think it's not just something that magically happens. So and I think the other aspect is that people have to realize that change isn't all sweeping, all encompassing. It can be minute, it can be small changes. To what degree does Othran change, I think, is the biggest question, or to what degree he will have changed by the end of his life or the end of the series, whichever comes first. So
such ominous hints here.
So we'll see. But I don't think it would be realistic to have a character that suddenly does an about face complete change and just becomes a different person. But
right,
he has a lot of growing to do.
Yeah, it sounds like it. We have another audience member question. Trudy Skies asks.
Trudy Skies, wonderful author.
Yeah.
Read her book, 13th Hour. It is phenomenal.
That is also waiting on my Kindle, and I'm excited to read it. Trudy asks, what lessons or takeaways do you want readers to take from your books?
Well, one of the things is that someone who is flawed does have the potential to change, because we flawed human beings, we have demonstrated the capacity to change. It depends on the circumstances, the individual, obviously, and the individual's capacity for growth and evolution. But the message is more, besides that, is that, we've been confounded by all these issues and themes that I talk about in the Drowned Kingdom, like racism, sexism, misogyny, homophobia, religious intolerance, and all these things. Humankind has been confounded by them for as long as humankind has been around, and we make progress, but we still can't get it right. We still can't eradicate it, and if the last, especially the last 5 to 10 years, I think has shown us, demonstrated us that these issues still really bewitch us. So I hope that through my novels, my work, that we can. I don't pretend to have any answers. I'm certainly not smart enough, but I hope that we can start actually looking at the questions, because I think that's a real issue, that we don't look at sometimes the questions and the actual genesis of where these things come from and why these problems really exist. And I think that's some of the stuff that I talk about. So the first step is really understanding what the problems are and where they come from, and then hopefully working towards a solution.
That's really interesting. And I love that you've approached it following the POV of a colonizer. Like that's a supremely interesting way to look at it. Are there alternate POVs in this story, or do we really just follow Othran?
Excuse me. Predominantly, we follow Othran. For the first time, there is another POV in the Last Atlanteans. There were no other POVs in the Drowned Kingdom. There is one chapter specifically as part of the character's name is Yedwal. He is Othran's uncle. He is essentially, he's the older version in a lot of ways of Othran, so he's even more entrenched in these views. You know, and but through him, and he and Othran have a very contentious relationship. While there's love there, there's also a lot of animosity and resentment in some ways. And you know, but yet Yedwal is probably the closest thing Othran has to a father. So it's very interesting dynamic. But Yedwal gets a POV that readers have said was really poignant and really shook them to the core. So I'd like to. I hope that I'm honored by the praise on that. There will be more different alternate POVs to Othran as the series progresses. There'll be more. You'll see a few more POVs, but predominantly it's Othran's show. He's the star, and he gets that first person narrative, and he gets to tell his story.
Yeah. Oh, that's interesting and exciting. This is moving it even higher up my TBR list. It already was, but
I'm honored. Thank you. I'm humbled by that.
But that's so exciting. I'm going to wait just a moment to see if anyone else wants to throw up some more audience questions. And yeah, do you want to talk a little bit about, so you said there are 7 books planned, and I won't ask you to delineate whether or not we, you know, who's around for all of those. That seems like an unfair question to ask. But for that seems like a pretty epic scope. Can you talk at all about the time period that covers without giving away too much, or is that a spoilery question? I don't know.
No, I can cover that because I have 20 books planned in my general universe. I have 7 books nominally planned about Othran and the time period he's living in, and then 2 prequel trilogies, both each on heroes that Othran speaks about and saga admires. And so you get to go back in time. These heroes lived before, one before Othran, one lived you know, approximately 500 years before he was born, and one lived, you know, somewhere in the neighborhood of, you know, 300-ish. So, and these heroes are not what he thinks they are. Of course, he wouldn't know that, but you know, so, and then there's another 7 books series planned after, kind of a follow-up to the Drowned Kingdom saga, which kind of wraps up, you know, the whole story, but it's all interlinked. And so, yeah, generally speaking, the first saga will cover, you know, in the neighborhood of 50 to 60 years ish.
Gotcha. Okay. Oh, that's interesting. That's a good scope. JBJ Blaze says, "Whoa, what prequel trilogies you're writing too?" and puts an amazed cat face. So sounds like you've got quite a few people excited about that. Trudy says, "Thank you for answering." JBJ Blaze says, "Yeah, agreed. Thank you for answering all those questions." And you have about 5 more minutes if you wanted to talk, but we can also wrap things up. Totally up to you.
Yeah, if it's okay, I just wanted to get a few things out in like 5 minutes. That's okay. Yeah. First of all, as you know, I'm heading to my first physical launch party.
Woohoo!
Thank you so much for all the writing community, authors, readers, podcasters, writers, reviewers, agents, you know, everyone involved. You know, it's been a really tumultuous, difficult time during the global pandemic. Things hopefully slowly are there's some sense of normalcy being established. But you know, I said this on previous podcasts, and I do I'm honored to be a co-host on a podcast on Steve Talks Books channel called Page Chewing, where we interview creatives, and we're talking about this. Thank you to QuaranCon and people like Virginia and like PS for putting these events on, because especially in the place of the loss of all of these physical book fairs and all these author conventions and all these things, you know, it's really helped get us all through. where we can all celebrate our love for books as authors, for us to get the word out there about what we're writing. And so thank you so much for doing that. Yeah, and I'm so excited to be going to Sarnia, Ontario, Imperial City Brew House. It's a fantastic craft brew house. That's where my launch party is happening. In about a couple of hours. I'm really excited, and I'm hoping and praying for all the authors out there to be able to participate in more and more things like that, and have physical launches for their books and book signings and all the things we had prior to the pandemic. So.
Awesome. Well, what a good choice, a brew house for a book launch. I have got to rethink my next book launch so that it has more beer.
You can't go wrong with beer.
Right? Especially craft beer. Come on. What have I been thinking? Although I did have sake at the first one, which I thought was a solid choice. So yeah. Thank you so much, PL, for being here, for all the things that you do for the indie community. Absolutely loved having you do this reading. We're so excited for you and your next book. Go community. Like, you do so much for the indie community as well, getting the word out there about people's books. You write amazing reviews that are like so in depth and like loving of other people's books. It's really fabulous, and I really appreciate that. And thank you so much for being here. Do you want to say anything else, or should we wrap it?
Yeah, no, go ahead. Final word. I would not be able to write those reviews and have the platform I did were not for Beth Tabler of the wonderful Before We Go blog. She is incredible, as you know. So thank you, Beth. My co-editor. I'm an assistant editor there. Beth is the editor. I'm a co-editor. My co-editor, Brianna Snyder. Want to shout her out, and all the amazing bloggers in Before We Go blog. I can't mention them all now, unfortunately, I don't have time, but they're all incredible. So, but thank you for what you do and for helping to give me that voice to help promote authors. So thank you.
Woohoo! Excellent. Yeah, everyone at Before We Go blog is excellent. We love those folks. So okay. Well, if that's everything, I don't see any more questions. I think we're good. I do see a couple of comments about beer, wine, and sake. But I think we've covered all the bookish things. Thank you again so much. And thanks everyone for being here for the reading. This will stay up indefinitely. So please feel free to share it far and wide and get many more people to look at PL's excellent series. And I think that's it for us. I am going to hit this button and we will wave and say goodbye. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks so much. Take care. Bye-bye now.